I'd like to welcome you to this bonus episode of Gary's Glorious Golden Nuggets. Today we have Brian Parsley. Brian began his life as a normal business trajectory. He was a door-to-door salesman. He developed and established 2 online businesses that he sold. He's been in the top 40 executives under 40 many years ago, but he was still awarded that. And he wasn't even 35 yet. So that's quite an accomplishment. Brian has his own podcast called The Life of Brian. And so I'm just really thrilled to have author, speaker, and person who has helped motivate many people into an online, how to set up a business relationship and how to work with human capital. Thank you so much for joining us, Brian.
It is a pleasure, Gary. Thank you. You have such a soothing voice. I feel like I should lay down and have you do some psychology.
Thank you very much. It took years to develop that skill. Okay, so let's just get right down to basics here. I'm just really curious. What do you wish you had known before you even began working towards an online business?
Well, first off, let's say that I spent the majority of my career in traditional business, temporary staffing. We can even go back to when I was a teenager, or even maybe prior to that. Back those days, I listened to a guy named Zig Ziglar, the old school, like the cassette tapes back when I was 11 and 12 years old. And I remember selling cookies at the corner at the stoplights, and lemonade. And then I got into, when I was like 14 or 15, I started a car wash business. And this was the mindset I had. I would go door to door and kind of determine who would like their car washed. I went and bought some money where I mowed a couple lawns and bought a bucket and some soap and a sponge. I found another young man, his name was Paul, and I got him to sign a contract that I wrote up. I would give $1,000 right now for that contract that I wrote on a piece of paper. And he would go and do it. So I would charge $5 to get your car washed. I would give him 2. I would keep 3. And I'll never forget, he wanted to quit. And I said, you can't, you signed a contract. And then his mom called my dad, and I got in all kinds of trouble, like saying that your son won't let him not work because he's in a contract and all that. So when I look back, I had this plethora of experience being an entrepreneur without realizing I was an entrepreneur. And that kind of progressed towards now. Before we get into the professional, let me understand the intellectual bandwidth capacity of myself. In America, we graduate with from 0.0 to 4.0 GPA. I had a 1.33. That's right above stupid. And then when we took our exams to go to college, I got a 450 or so on my SAT, a 12 on my ACT. And if you don't know or are familiar with that, those again are really, I think you get 400 points for signing your name, something like that. And I remember a counselor told me, she said, you may want to consider just learning how to use your hands, do some type of trade, because college is not going to be for you. So I went to college, proved her right, dropped out after 6 months, and just began working in retail, working in fast food, working in restaurants. And I think that's very typical for someone in their 20s. And I was around 25 years old, 26 years old, bad credit, no money, living in a crappy little place, got a job selling. And I found that selling was my niche. I realized that that's where I felt the most comfortable. Got into temporary staffing business, selling temps, did that, and met a guy who became my mentor, who was the CEO of a large bank. And that was the one thing I did that was very consistent. I would recommend, Gary, for everybody is no matter how old you are, network. Networking is not net drinking. It's networking. It's about putting yourself out there. And again, not trying to sell someone something, rather, and I didn't know this at the time, but this is the strategy that's created success in my life, is give value first. What can you do to give value to other people all the time without any expectation of anything in return? The bad side about that is you leave money on the table. There's deals that you're never going to get. The upside is you become known as someone that gives value, and you become known as someone that they can trust, and business will happen and occur. So beginning that kind of mindset at that age, began to work hard, and very lucky in a lot of ways, but started a business that we sold and another business that we sold. And in the year 2001, I began my journey, I guess, really of being an online entrepreneur. I had an online recruitment site that we sold, and then started an online training business that we sold. to solution selling in 2012. But I've been doing consulting and speaking since 2001, meaning I give seminars globally. I think you and I were just chatting before we started recording that my first speech was in 1986 at the Optimist Club. My teacher saw something in me and enrolled me into this class. I still have the little award that I won back then. I keep it right here on my desk as a reminder. This was it right here, as a reminder that says that if you follow your dreams and you work hard, and I knew at that moment I wanted to do this in some way. And I've made millions of dollars over the years doing something that I'm passionate about. And when people say to me, they're like, oh my goodness, I want to do what you do. How do I make money doing this? I said, well, let's see, 86, 96, 2006. I'm sorry, 86, 96, 2006. I've been doing it, 40 years almost, 30 some years. I mean, put some work into something. You'll get pretty good at it after a while. And so now I just spend my life, I've been very lucky to travel and just kind of help other people build their business. And that's what I'm focusing on. And even like today, doing this with you, it's a pleasure because for me, if I can add value to someone and help them in any way, or maybe someone that's listening right now that says, gosh, am I here by accident? Am I here for purposeful reasons? But if you can walk away with one nugget of information that can impact your life in a positive way, you're a success. And success to me is the progressive realization of something that you believe is worthy of your time. And a lot of times it's that journey that we hate the most, but yet looking back is probably one of the most enjoyable parts of the journey that we forget about, that day in, day out. I will close this kind of rant that somehow I accidentally got on by saying that, even as a parent, the days feel long, but the years fly by. And I think a lot of people can relate to that in their life. You wake up, and ironically, Gary, this weekend I turned 50, 50, and 50 is the new 30. And I say, who says that? Old people. They don't want to get old. And we sit there and I look back and I go, how did I get here? This is crazy. So that's kind of, I'm pontificating, without even leading into any questions. So,
Well, I'm going to make a segue right here because I think what would be interesting, you've named all of these successes that you've had in your life. I just really am interested right now in what would be, in your mind, the biggest failure that you've had, and what did you learn from it?
I don't think that I can tell you that the biggest failure is an incident as much as a mindset. I believe sometimes we all fall into the trap of being impatient. And I know that's really kept me from, I think, achieving even what's my real potential, being impatient, not wanting to wait. I think that we want something bad enough, we have to be willing to watch it grow. You can't plant the seed and then dig it up and look and see where it's going, right? You just got to water it and hope. And sometimes you can water, get the right amount of sunlight, and it's going to be a weed, and you have to be okay with that. I don't look at bad choices or bad situations as failure. I think failure comes into play is when you do the same thing over and over again, not realizing. It's why sometimes, I got a cat that does that, keeps going to this thing and it falls on him. I mean, like, how many times you got to be stupid that every time you touch it, it falls on you? But we're very similar. Like, we keep doing the same thing over and over again, and a lot of times not realizing, or at least hoping, that it's going to be different. So that would be my biggest failure, is my inability to be patient and wait. But also that could be your greatest strength.
I really appreciate what you've said in the first two questions. So many golden nuggets of wisdom and opportunity and understanding for growth right in there. And that's really what this whole format is about, is for people to listen in and pick up what they need to know. As you speak, I can hear you are a reader. You're taking phrases from Earl Nightingale. You're taking phrases from Einstein. You're just moving along. So you may not have been the best academic student, but you have been a learner.
I think for sure a learner. Reading, probably not so much. I'm sitting here looking at these books I have, that how many, with the intent that I'm going to read them, but I don't. I think that because as a young child, I became obsessed with Zig Ziglar, obviously Earl Nightingale. Well, Earl Nightingale is where I think when I was 12 years old, working towards a worthy ideal was something that I began my whole life around. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. It's funny because all these things that we listen to and read or watch or experience, really all come from the Bible. I mean, it's not something that some brilliant person or Einstein or any of these people that they made this stuff up. I think it's a combination of thousands of years of evolution. And what it really shows me is people are the same, whether it's 100 years ago, 400 years ago, we all have the same basic desires. Everybody wants to feel important, feel valued, and craves appreciation. And how can we help people feel appreciated? Because if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, obviously many people in this world are living at the bottom of that hierarchy of just survival. I'm sure you've seen that. In order for us to go to this higher level of actualization, we must be cognizant of our desire to feel loved and needed and appreciated. And so I really, for me, like to spend my time helping other people feel that, because I know with certainty that those things will grow. I have somewhere on my Instagram page, it's about a year ago, I have a little video of a guy. I'm trying to think of his name off the top of my head, but he was a server assistant, meaning he wasn't really the server or waiter, but he kind of helped with the tables. This is in Las Vegas. He's about 55 years old, the most incredible personality. And I interviewed him on the spot in there. He said, I came to this country from Cuba and I escaped communism. He said, every day I show up here, I love my job. I love my family, the people that I serve every day. And I'm just thankful to have a job. And I'm thankful that I can serve other people. And you would look at that from the outside and think, well, this person has, let's call it an average job, maybe, when the scale of what we look at, banker, president versus, a server assistant. But yet he has so much more fulfillment and happiness than maybe the people that we perceive as successful. And why is that? Because success really, when you go back to that statement about worthy ideal, it's funny how it's a very fluid kind of, gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Being able to scale of what's success and what's not success. Because I know a lot of people, and by a lot, more than 10, that are extremely successful financially, but are morally bankrupt or just unhappy and unfulfilled. And you think, well, why do people turn to drugs and alcohol? As a vice, not as a social thing. And it's a lot of times it's because they're seeking or trying to run away from something.
That's just so full of nuggets of wisdom. I'm just impressed. What are the best resources that you've come across that you could suggest to other people to help them along their way?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think right here, right now, even having sometimes this type of dialogue going back and forth, it enlightens myself to discover something. I think being open, being willing to admit our fears and our challenges. My whole life, I'm going to share something I've never shared with anyone. My whole life, I never really was big on birthdays or Christmas and things like that. I remember when I was about 12 years old, maybe 13, all I wanted was what was called an Intellivision. It was kind of like a game system, like a PlayStation is now, but back in the 80s. I told my dad, I said, for 6 months, that's all I want is an Intellivision. I want my own Intellivision I could hook up to the big console TV and or an Atari. But I really wanted an Intellivision. He's like, well, we'll see. 6 months every week, Dad, if all I have is this. And now this is the same guy growing up that said, I said, Dad, one day, I want to have money. Why do you want money? People with money are unhappy. I'm like, we're broke. We're unhappy. It's like, what's the difference? And so anyway, I invited my friend Joel, came over. I remember this box that was sitting over there next to the table. And I was like, oh, Dad, can I play it? I got to wait till after dinner. After dinner, I ripped open the gift, the one gift I had, and it was a duffel bag, a brown duffel bag. And I said, well, I wanted an Intellivision. You'll forget about that Intellivision, but you'll always remember a duffel bag. You can use that. And he's right. I never forgot about that duffel bag. But the gift that it really left me was this resentment and this painful disappointment. So as an adult, I never really realized, and my wife always says, gosh, you're just so hard to buy for, and you don't want for anything, and you never ask, and it makes, I want to give, and I want to give to you, I want to make you happy, but there's nothing that works. And so my wife is sick for the last 3 weeks. She got E. coli when we were in Mexico, so she's been kind of battling stuff. And we were going this weekend for my 50th, and we were going to go fly for the day to the beach and have lunch. And long story short, on Thursday, she was like, I just don't know if I'm going to go. And it unlocked, Gary, something that I had this flood of frustration, and anger is not the word, but just such severe disappointment from that. It triggered, and I realized at that moment, the reason why I was avoiding birthdays was for disappointment. Now, we ended up going, by the way, yesterday, but it really was a trigger for me that said, I'm screwed up. I am really effed up, and it's from my childhood. We're broken human beings. And I posted that actually on my Instagram, that will you admit that you're broken? And that's why I wrote that. It was like I woke up that morning, and it was just last week, and I thought, man, this is so like eye-opening. So maybe the other thing that I would say to you is we have to be willing to look in the mirror and accept what it is, and then say, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do?
I think we all have to accept that this whole planet is full of people who are walking wounded, and that is the average person. They're wounded. And so we just kind of have to accept that and extend some compassion and grace towards people. I think that's a truth that I hold. It's amazing how your life and my life have actually paralleled quite a bit, but we're talking about you and not me today. So what would you say in your life were the most influential people, dead or alive, helped you become who you are today?
I think we should turn that question to whoever's watching or listening right now to say, think about this question in terms of you. I think we can learn not even just from people, but from our pets. If you're a pet person, your animals, what do they teach you? Think about dogs. You could have a dog, not that I would ever do this, but not feed them for 4 days, leave, come back, and they're just so grateful you're home. You're not going to believe this. Somebody forgot to feed me. Like they're not just forgiving, they're just unconditional, loving, beings. We could all learn to be more like that. We're entitled jerks. We're ego focused, and then we hide it. Or you could be very successful, but still have the poor mindset. And then that's a problem. I think the secret is having the sensory acuity to realize that you've triggered something. When I look at who do I respect, alive or dead, like my mom died when that's her picture right there, when I was 1 year old. I never really got to know her. Didn't have that mother figure like you would want. My father was not very emotionally, strong person to show that love. And I believe that despite that, I've become a very sensitive, loving. I want to be the father I wish I had. And that's always been my logo. So you can also learn from people and that maybe have impacted you in a not so positive way, and say, what can I learn from them to do it? And I'm not saying my father was bad, because he wasn't. He was a good guy, did the best he could, because he was broken in a lot of ways. His father was very horrible from the stories that I've heard. But I think, how can I make an impact on other people? I just learn. And it's funny because you can learn also when you're around people what you want to be. This is why I tell my 15-year-old daughter, I say, look, it's okay to feel upset if you're dating a boy and you break up and things aren't, these relationships are building a perfect future for you. I want you to think about the things that you loved most about their traits, their personality, the way they treated you. I also want you to look at the things that you're going to be non-negotiable for each time. And as you progress towards that perfect person for you, you can look at these failures as successes, because we start to understand what we don't want. And I'm not trying to oversimplify our lives as adults, because adulting is hard and I think life is difficult. You're on this earth 80 years if you're lucky. What are you going to do with that?
That's absolutely true. If you could step into my shoes and you would say, so if there was a question here of what I should have asked you that I haven't, what question would that be?
Gosh, that's probably the most difficult question I think I've ever been asked by anybody. I think that what a powerful question, even for us to ask ourselves. We listen to this. I think that really understanding what is going to make you happy in life is a question that on the surface seems so easy to answer, but funny. People try to say, if only I can do this, I'll be happy. If only I can make this much money, if only I can achieve this, if only I do this, I'll be happy. When in fact, if you just stay happy and live in that moment of being okay with where you are right now, everything else will follow after that. And it's so simple, and yet we don't do it. And I don't quite understand, happiness is very subjective. And we just did the lottery, the Mega Millions lottery. Someone won $1 billion. I don't know if you can live on that or not. I know I can, but $1 billion. And it's funny because I bought a ticket and I sat there and I laid in bed and not thinking about how I'm going to spend it, but how would I feel? I call this the lotto mentality. You won $1 billion. Your lawyers say, listen, next 3 months, you can't tell anybody. You got to do your thing while we set up all this because it's a security risk. But imagine your attitude, how different it would be. It would you wouldn't care. Like, and not in a bad way. You just wouldn't care. Things don't bother you. It's like, you know what? I could buy this place. Like, I'm not so worried about it. I'm not worried about rejection. I'm not worried about what people think. So what does that show or demonstrate? That we all have that power within us already. It's a mindset thing. It's not a physical thing. When we die, we will be as rich as Steve Jobs or anybody else that's died before us. It's all the same. You close your eyes for the last time, you're done. And so are we putting too much emphasis on the physical and monetary success? And I get that we need money, and especially in the Western worlds and capitalism, because you don't want to grow up and eat cat food when you retire. But at the same time, how much do you really need in order to find that true fulfillment? You work really, really hard so I can die and my wife and her new boyfriend are really vacationing. I kind of find that blend and not live in fear. Fear is a big preventer of success, whatever that means to you.
I think you have just summed up the entire law of attraction. If people really pick that apart, the want, the why, without ever talking about the how, it will materialize and you'll be there. You are so interesting, Brian. I know you're a really busy man, but is there a way people could contact you or learn more about you?
Well, look, if you go on my Instagram, which is BrianParsleyspeaker, I try to put things on there on a daily basis. I don't sell stuff. Again, BrianParsley.com, have my podcast and all that. But, the bottom line is that if I can add value for someone, that's why I love doing this, Gary, is if one person hears this and sees this and they can make an impactful change in someone else's life or their own life. To me, you succeeded, I succeeded, and we've made our mark in this world because this will live beyond you and me.
Well, I'll tell you what, somebody's driving down the road right now saying, oh my gosh, I wish I had a pen. I wish I had a pencil. Don't worry, it'll be in the show notes. And you can just take a look. That information will be there for you, easy to access. Brian, I give every person who comes onto this podcast 2 uninterrupted minutes to say whatever they want to say to the world. That time is now yours.
You know what? And it's so funny because I could do talks in front of 10,000 people, no problem. I love what I do, and I'm passionate about everything that we share, whether it's business tactics to coaching to just personal performance. If you ask me to give a toast or you ask me to give up and give a little impromptu speech around me, I get extremely uncomfortable. And it's so interesting how I do seminars and consulting for a living, but yet if I go to a party, I sit in a corner and I'm very kind of antisocial in a lot of ways. Maybe it's shyness or whatever. So that question for me, or that opportunity to do 2 minutes of uninterrupted, is difficult, to say the least, because I don't like the light shining on me. I'm merely a mirror or a reflection to give back to other people. And that's how I've always kind of operated. But I would say to people, no matter your age, your education, your background, is to know that you deserve to have success in your life. And success is maybe being an amazing mom or dad or brother, sister, son, daughter. But identify what that is and what that really means and the why behind it, and then go for it. This year is a monumental year for me, turning 50. But more than anything else, the gift I learned was that I recognized why I hated birthdays, and I'm not going to let that happen going forward. Knowing is really not the power. Knowing and doing something with it is the power. And I like to throw out 2 F words: fast and flexible. If you have an idea, a dream, if you have anything, go for it as fast as possible. And then you can always be flexible. Don't get so ego focused that you're not willing to change direction because for whatever reason you believe, well, that was the way it's supposed to be. No, I think you have to adapt. And when you are adapting and you are flexible, your life will change for the better. So for what it's worth, that's my 2 minutes, but I'm always accessible for anybody. In fact, even on my Instagram page, I have my mobile number on there. So like, I'm always about sharing. I don't really, I've met some of the most amazing people. One of my best friends in the world, known him since 2006, was a random cold call when I was working for a company. He lives in Johannesburg, South Africa, and his name is Mark Keating. I just invited him to come stay for a couple of weeks. He came over from South Africa, never met the guy, didn't know him. He's just wanting to network and build here. And I'm not, by the way, throwing it out where everybody starts wanting to move in with me. But anyway, we met. He was the CEO. I vetted him out. I mean, it's not like he was a drifter. He was the CEO of a media company. But I came over to South Africa, did a little talk for his company, actually met my future wife there, although we didn't know it at the time. And, many years later, reconnected and got married. So my point is that you never know. Everything happens for a reason if you're willing to look and be willing to take the chance.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that'll conclude our episode today. Please subscribe, share the podcast. If you didn't get golden nuggets from this episode, I don't know where you're ever going to find them. So thank you so much, Brian. Thank you.
Appreciate it.